Departments are the administrative structures. They're not the disciplines, and we shouldn't confuse them. And I think that sometimes when we get so taken up and preoccupied with the administrative structure, the department, we work in the trenches and we can't really see what is in front of us. And sometimes we can't even see where the horizon is because we're in the trenches. But by taking away the administrative structure and focusing on the disciplines without the silos, we can actually begin to promote interdisciplinary work in a much more efficient way. And I've noted that there are some international universities, sometimes universities of technology, who have been bold enough to actually embark on this system. And I realize that, of course, it is much easier if you're a young university. Some of these older universities have got very strong traditions, and it's difficult to break these habits. But I hope that we can have a fruitful discussion today. And this is also the last seminar or webinar in the series for this year. And I think we are closing it with a bang on a very, very important topic. So thank you very much, Dr. Magaiza. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Hudson, and thank you for welcoming and also for already introducing what is interdisciplinary research. We do have, and as stated by Prof. Hudson, we do have quite an exciting panel. I will just go through them and their short bios immediately. Dr. Pekitemba Dube, who holds a PhD in Curriculum Studies and currently a senior lecturer at the University of the Free State. A very prolific author with more than 85 journal articles. His scholarship is on the issues in the areas of religion and politics in the Global South. He's a guest editor of multiple journals: Outer Nation, Journal of Cultures and Values, Journal of Curriculum Studies Research, and Journal of Curriculum Studies Research. And he has a number of prolific awards. So he is at the interface of interdisciplinary research, and we can't wait to hear what he has to say. Dr. Julie Shepard-Powell is an assistant professor and graduate program director in Appalachian Studies at Appalachian State University, an anthropologist by training. Her research includes community-based activism around coal extraction, natural gas pipeline development in Appalachia, and she investigates the complicated intersections of everyday lives, economic uncertainties, and environmental destruction in mountain communities. She is very good at Appalachian music and a dancer, and she also has has a creative and scholarly endeavors around the embodied practice and diversity of Appalachian music and practice. So again, interdisciplinary approach in terms of who she is, and an interdisciplinary practitioner, if I might say that. Then we have Dr. Mshonga, who has a PhD and with a background training in history, education, and Africa studies, and has taught in 3 universities on the African continent. As a political and decolonial researcher, he enjoys operating at the margins. He is a program director for Africa Studies in the Center for Gender and Africa Studies at the UFS, and a member of the editorial board of OHASA, and an associate editor of the Southern Journal for Contemporary History. He is also the global academic director of the Decolonial International Network, and involved in a number of interdisciplinary research projects, both as principal and co-investigator. So he lives and thrives on interdisciplinary research. We also have Dr. Marijikuru Mwale Manjoro, who's a senior lecturer in the Institute for Rural Development, Faculty of Science, Engineering and Agriculture at the University of Venda, where she coordinates the PhD program in IRD, Institute for Rural Development, serves in the Faculty of Research and Postgraduate Committee, Research Advisory Forum, and Social Sciences Research Ethics, for which she is the deputy chairperson. She has successfully co-supervised 39 students um, 11 PhD, 9 research masters, and 19 honor students. She mentors a postdoctoral fellow and has published widely, and she's leading research on village chicken and ethno-veterinary medicine for enhanced food security in rural communities, water security and socio-hydrological resilience of rural small-scale crop value chains. And all these are grant-funded research by to hear what Dr. Kanyetsi has to say. So that is our panel, and we'll start with just a good opening. What is interdisciplinary research? So to the panelists, I'll probably ask Dr. Dube to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Gray, and good afternoon to all the colleagues that are joining us, and thank you for this session, and particularly also inviting us as the Faculty of Education. It actually attests to the very core of the vision of your faculty to ensure that there is multidisciplinary approach in whatever you do. And I'm also glad when I was hearing Prof. Hudson, the Dean of the faculty, talking about the borderless curriculum, and it is exactly what we are actually working with the colleagues from the Appalachian State University, where we envision a better future beyond the walls of the departments. And hearing her echo those sentiments, it actually affirms the need and the urgency that we have to embark on this issue of interdisciplinary research. So for me, I will not, in terms of definition of interdisciplinary research, I will not want to theorize it and say according to so and so defines interdisciplinary as this, but I just take it as a reflection of my experience in the field, and therefore I'm drawing my definition within that narrative of what I've experienced. I see interdisciplinary research as a definition. It has got about 5 components that are very important that I have actually centered and where I've zeroed my research. And one of in terms of definition, I see it as a research for definition, for collaboration. I see it as a research that speaks of much of collaboration, where we go beyond our ordinary fences, our ordinary boundaries that have been put to ensure that we collaborate with different colleagues in different faculties. And the second aspect that I see in terms of interdisciplinary approach is where it's a research that is aimed at destroying or minimizing boundaries that have been enacted over the years to prevent certain disciplines to engage. So when we engage in this, we are in mitigating some of the trajectories that we have seen in terms of people blocking their spaces for others. So it is a research that tries to say, let us open up. Let us open up our boundaries so that we learn from one another. But most of that is that it is a research that is saying we are willing to learn from other spaces. We want to learn from the best practices. There are best practices that are taking place in humanity, in education, in natural sciences. And we, as scholars, we need to stop and say, what can we learn from these disciplines? So that's how I will define interdisciplinary. But it's also, I define it as a research that is open for new possibilities and new possibilities that can emerge. So it doesn't restrain one to a particular corner, but it is a discipline that says, let us go beyond what is ordinary. And therefore, the last aspect about it is that it is a research that engages with the realities of the people. The life problems are not segmented, they are actually intertwined. And therefore, any solution that is to be offered to the society must also speak to the issues of different disciplines and working together. That's how I will define them. The issue of interdisciplinary. And then let me move on, because I will allocate about 7 to 10 minutes so that I finish what
that's fine. That's fine.
Yes.
You can
Okay.
proceed.
Thank you,
Yes.
Chair. And then now, then the second question that I also attempted to answer was that I'm going to respond is, why interdisciplinary research in the 21st century? Why is it an urgent issue? Why is it an issue that we must even meet on this day and speak about it? My first point is that in the 21st century is confronted with many challenges, as we have seen with COVID. There are many challenges that we are meeting, that we met, and therefore it also propelled us to understand that these life problems cannot be confronted with one faceted approach. We need a multifaceted approach where different disciplines can emerge and come together and solve the problem. But it also, why we do it is also, it promotes respect for other disciplines. We lived in some time back, we lived in a space where certain people believe that their disciplines are better than others, and some they still believe. But I'm of the opinion of, especially departing from the decolonial narratives, that all knowledges are important, and they are valuable to everyone in the same measure in which it could be valuable to you. And therefore, engaging in this type of respect of research, it actually allows us to respect other disciplines. For example, I have a project that I do with Prof. Peter here at UFS, and they deal with beds, and I come in with education in that project, and it's yielding good results, because we are actually realizing that even when they deal with their beds in their spaces, we still need education aspects, so that the people that are working, that interact with these beds, can actually have an idea how to treat and coexist with them in that space. So it also creates a generation that sees interconnectedness of human life beyond one's discipline. So we need it, because we want to cultivate among the young scholars that are coming into the field of research that you cannot go solo, you need others. And therefore, probing and having such discussion like we are having, we are positioning ourselves to create a new generation of scholars that will understand the need to break down the boundaries that are there that have been put in terms of our disciplines. And once we are able to mitigate and minimize these boundaries, we know that we can improve humanities. We can move towards a direction where humanity can actually solve human problems. But for more so, we do it so that we get new ideas, because there are new ideas out there that can come from humanity, that can come from social sciences. And therefore, as an educator, for me to get new ideas, to create knowledge, I need to be in the space of willingness to integrate with other departments to get that knowledge. And therefore, what could be the ingredients of successful interdisciplinary research? I also have about 5 or 6 points that have worked for me, because I'm trying to run
Dr.
away.
Dube,
Yes.
Dr. Dube,
Yes.
maybe before we get there,
Yeah. Okay.
we'll
Sure.
come again.
Yes. Okay.
You've laid a solid foundation. So let's.
Okay, Chair. Thank you so much.
if interdiscipline, I just realized I was muted. My apologies. If interdisciplinarity is boundary breaking and is opening up new possibilities, how the how part, what are the intricate mechanisms that we follow in our own scholarship to really ensure that we get to a point where interdisciplinarity becomes the norm? Dr. Manjoro, would you care to add to that, or some of the issues that Dr. Dube has raised?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Gray. Good afternoon and greetings to colleagues. I think, like what Prof. Hudson indicated to say, she would want to break the departments. We may also need to break the greetings of getting used to morning, afternoon, evening due to time zones, because as we work as interdisciplinary faculties, we may be from different time zones. So I just say greetings. I would like to say thank you so much for the invitation to this important discussion, and much appreciation from Dr. Due for paving the way. I would like to indicate to say that just to add on within the definition, to say it should be clear to us as individuals, to say this can be between institutions, within institutions, in the same country, or across countries or regions. And apart from breaking the other notions mentioned, I think it also helps to break the notion of seeing one discipline as more important than the other, because usually there's a tendency of thinking that there are some disciplines which are more important than the other. But now it's helping us to see that we are all pieces of a puzzle, which when we come together, we can do far much better than when I do it alone. So it helps in bringing effectiveness and impactful outcomes, and even positive outcomes to the society. I thought I should just add on to that. So in making it a success, I think it brings in the issue of respecting one another's discipline, having that mutual respect. Because the moment we come in, there's nobody who is better than the other. There's no discipline that is better than the other. We are equally important in trying to deal with complex challenges. So in this instance, we are co-creating some solutions in a holistic approach. So that alone is very important in ensuring that we manage this. I'd like to indicate that it's also very, very important to ensure that we have a common understanding from the beginning, and everybody is involved from the onset. Reason being, if some come later, they may not really see how to fit in unless it is clearly explained. Just from experience, from some of the projects that I've been involved in, you would notice that you might end up taking a while of time trying to explain and really see what is the challenge that we want to address here. How best can we approach in terms of solving it? Reason being, as we are coming from different disciplines, we have different approaches to research, for example. So at the end of the day, it will delay the process. But if we all start from the beginning in conceptualizing on what is it that we want to tackle, it becomes easier, because that becomes the driver of what we want to achieve at the end of the day. So having a common understanding is very, very crucial in interdisciplinary research. I would also want to indicate that it's important as well in an interdisciplinary research, for instance. It helps, reason being, at the end, there is expanded skills and knowledge, and we are acknowledging each other's skills and knowledge at the same time. So it's important to unlearn yourself, or to consider yourself as if you don't know, because when you get in there, you learn more and you really appreciate the community, because then at the end of the day, it starts as a team. And that's where the issue of networking comes in, effective network and connectedness. And at the end of the day, you would notice that you become a family and then a community, which is geared towards solving a particular problem. And in that case, it helps us to make use of limited resources in the society, and also to share those resources without borders, especially due to the issue of globalization and internationalization. So I believe there are some times where I've learned from experience that it's not in the edge, because at times one might say, I may not learn from probably a student, for instance. There are some postgraduate students who might be knowing something, and incorporating them in those researches, you would really enjoy the journey, and also embracing them. So as much as they are learning, you also learn from them. So at the end of the day, there is that core learning that is taking place, and there is co-owning of the product, so that at least at the end of the day, there's nobody who received the accolade at the expense of others. So I think I believe that it helps a lot to ensure that we are all at the same page, we have that common understanding, and there's that mutual respect, and we all sail together and we reach the mark to where we really want to go. I think for the sake of giving others opportunity, I may end here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manjoro. We can hear that the issue is about having a common understanding. Now, before I bring in the other colleagues, is this a common understanding of the problem, the issue, or a common understanding of the research process that has to be followed? If we have this common understanding, who pushes the agenda in an interdisciplinary context to ensure that we all have a common understanding? Jules, do you want to take that? And any other issue you might want to bring up?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning here, but good afternoon to you all, colleagues. Thank you for allowing me to participate in this conversation today. I'm excited to be here with you all. I will get to that issue of common understanding in a moment, but I want to give you just a little bit of my background as sort of a segue into this conversation and the way I think about interdisciplinary research and work. So I do have a PhD in anthropology, and that's my training, but I also have a Master of Arts degree in Appalachian Studies, which is the field that I work in now. So Appalachian Studies is interdisciplinary by nature. So anthropology, biology, English, history, political science, sociology, technology. Those are just a few of the disciplines that I work with here at Appalachian State University in the mountains in North Carolina. So we intentionally have this sort of interdisciplinary approach because we are trying to prepare our students to address real world issues, whether they're in mountain communities here in Appalachia or elsewhere. And it's also because we really value multiple modes of knowing and multiple modes of seeking knowledge, and believe that those together can really tackle some of these issues. So I've heard from the colleagues that have spoken before me, three themes that kind of stuck out to me that I thought I was really excited. I heard these words already, but collaboration, connection, and community orientation were three things that I heard and I think are really important. So for me, that common understanding and how we get to that is really community-based. And I feel like my work as an academic and as someone who does interdisciplinary research is really grounded in the idea of respect of community and respect not only of multiple disciplines and our ways of knowing in those different disciplines, but also sort of on the ground real world knowledge that's coming from people who are living with certain problems. So to give you a very quick example from my own research, when I was doing my dissertation research about environmental issues caused by coal extraction in the mountains here, I ended up doing a lot of ethnographic interviews, of course, because I am an anthropologist. But during my research, I found that there was a need to work with ecologists who could do water testing to help sort of verify the issues that different residents were identifying with the water. They could tell that there was no fish in the water. They could tell that the water looked funny, that it smelled funny, but they didn't have the certain skills that they needed to do the water quality testing. So we had an ecologist come in and do the water quality testing. And then alongside the ecologist, we had a legal team, so lawyers who were able to take that information about the pollutants in the water and bring forward lawsuits against the coal company, who eventually was forced to clean up the mess that they had created, and also provide some funding for other sort of environmental mitigation factors in the community there. And so I think, to me, this is a really wonderful example of how interdisciplinary work can be in service to the community. And again, I really feel like this is one of the most important things we can do as scholars, and our interdisciplinarity can really help us get at solving some of these real world issues that we know are all connected and not just suited to one discipline. So I will stop there so that I can give other folks on the panel an opportunity to speak to some of these issues.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jules, and thanks for identifying those three common themes. Dr. Mshonga, any thoughts on evolving a common understanding of within interdisciplinary research?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are, or good evening. This is a very fascinating conversation, but I would also like to start with the idea of the woman or man in the mirror, which is about the self and the person, in terms of who I am and who are we. And I'm a Black African scholar, son of a peasant, father of 3 girls, husband, historian, a holder in graduate certificate in education, a holder in a master's in history, Africa studies. And I believe that, when we have to do our teaching and the research and everything else, we cannot divorce ourselves from who we are. So I believe in the philosophy of situated knowledges, embodied knowledges, and subjective knowledges, as opposed to the idea of unsituated, disembodied, or objective knowledge. So this is very, very important for me. And if you have to do that, you need actually interdisciplinarity. And then also to say that, in terms of where I am, in the Center for Gender and Africa Studies, actually we are a vast interdisciplinary enterprise here, because we engage with multiplicity of disciplines, where we try to transcend specific disciplines. So Africa Studies is actually encountered in both the disciplines, if you want, as well as the interdisciplines. And so this actually reflects for me the duality and complexity of the field, because you cannot have interdiscipline, the interdisciplines without the disciplines. And it is also important, I think, for me to say that we are living in an age of intellectual uncertainty, where knowledge and the knowledge of knowledge itself is actually contested. And this contestation actually is leading to the disintegration of the master narratives, the meta narratives, the meta scripts, and you name it. And if we have to answer very difficult, very troubling, and very unsettling questions of the 21st century, you need to cross the boundaries of disciplines. So in other words, you need interdisciplinarity, and that means obviously borrowing ideas, methods, theories, and what have you from all over. And in our center, from my philosophy, and I believe those of my colleagues, we actually believe in asking very difficult and unsettling questions in terms of who is Africa? What is Africa? What is Africa studies? What is human? Where are women in history? What are their voices? What is the place of our identity? What is the role of geography? What is the role of biography? And what is the role of ideology in knowledge production? If you have to get answers, because I don't believe responses, I don't believe in answers. If you have to get responses actually to these troubling and unsettling questions, you need to cross the disciplines. So it is very important for me to say that. And also to say, you know, if I were to quote Tiambe Zeleza, in terms of what he thinks about interdisciplinarity, but obviously to its detractors, interdisciplinarity is seen as a threat to disciplinary boundaries, to hierarchies and rigor. Whereas to its proponents like myself, actually I see value in its creative space between the disciplines, where new questions are asked, new approaches are developed, and new understandings are advanced, as the rest of the colleagues have actually said. And I would also hasten to add that in line with the rest of what the rest of the colleagues have said, you know, I would like to quote E.H. Carr, a historian who wrote in his book, What is History, in 1967, and I quote, "History is concerned with the relation between the unique and the general. Sociology at present faces two opposite dangers, the danger of becoming outer theoretical and the danger of becoming outer empirical. The more sociological history becomes, and the more historical sociology becomes, the better for both. Let the frontier between them be kept wide open for a two-way traffic." So this idea that interdisciplinarity is a new phenomenon, it's a lie. As you can see here, this is all the way far back into the 1960s. So there has always been that coexistence. And I'm proud to declare before everyone in this house today to say that the organizer of this panel himself, Dr. Ray Magaiza, is actually a sociologist and / historian, because he's participating in a project, the Borderlands Project, the Lesotho South Africa Borderlands Project, dominated by historians. And we've all benefited from his sociological interventions and vice versa for him. So that is the beauty of interdisciplinarity, to break boundaries, to disrupt boundaries, and actually to do away with academic, tribalism. If you really want to solve problems of the 21st century, you need interdisciplinarity. The disciplines are no longer necessary. They served their purpose. They were crafted and developed at a point when they needed to serve a specific and particular purpose. But I think they've outlived their purpose. So, Chair, if maybe I should stop there. I don't know how much I've spoken. I still have other.
No, you'll come back. You'll have a second bite at it. Thank you so much, Dr. Mshonga. Those are fascinating points. I'm gonna go back to a point you raised, and it's almost similar to to the question I asked about what is interdisciplinary research. I'll ask Dr. Kenyetsi whether or not, in your view, we still need disciplines.
Thank you very much, Chair. Greetings, colleagues. Yes, Chair. We need interdisciplinarity, not individual disciplines. When I got the invitation, what came into my mind is, what is the aim of research? The aim of research is obvious, but I want to talk to it. It is to solve problems. Research has been there for a very long time, but problems still continue. What I observe, which I also draw from other scholars, is that in most cases, people want to go for their disciplines. They don't want to go for interdisciplinarity. That is one of the reasons why we still experience problems. So when I look at interdisciplinarity, in addition to what other scholars have already raised in this forum, is accepting one another, is appreciating one another, And it's giving space to one another that from each discipline, we can have strategies which can help one another. I will also draw from the Sesotho proverb, which translates as intelligence has no one source. It comes from multiple sources. So when we talk of interdisciplinarity, we mean that we should complement each other. Because if we want to solve problems with just one strategy or from one discipline, we are really failing. Like I indicated at the beginning of my talk, that no one can have all strategies or all solutions from the problems that the world is facing. It's only when we come together and try to face the problems and come up with different strategies, at least we can have a better stand to solve problems. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kanyetsi. And thank you so much to the panel for the initial thoughts on this topic. It reminds me of the proverbial blind man who was asked to describe an elephant by touching it. And at some parts of the body of the elephant, he said it's a tree. At another part, he said it's a trunk. When he touched the tail, he said it's a root. So it's almost how we operate when we look at reality and when we look to the world from our specific disciplines and not look at it from a holistic perspective. Now, I'll come back to Dr. Dube. He was about to start on the ingredients for success. How can we bring disciplines together to explore, investigate issues that society faces? I know Jules also gave an example, but maybe Dr. Dube can kick us off on that.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to my other panelists for the interesting points. On this aspect of the ingredients, I'm going to raise about 6 issues that I personally do to ensure that I work within the space of interdisciplinary research. The first one is on myself, that I have to understand the limitation of my discipline. My discipline is not the alpha and omega of knowledge, and it's not the alpha and omega of human solutions and the ambivalence thereof. Therefore, for me to come out of my comfort zone, I must have that understanding that that I'm limited as a researcher in my space. Therefore, I need to tap into other best practices that are provided by other disciplines. And then the second aspect is on the flexibility. You know, as a scholar, if you want to make it in this 21st century, there is that need of flexibility, to be flexible and willingness to learn something, because there is always something else, and something else, there is always something new, and it is possible to learn new things. So once we have that understanding as a researcher to say there is something else, I can learn something new, then you are in the right path of interdisciplinary research, because something new might not reside within your discipline. It might need you to move to other spaces so that you can learn something new, so that our papers, our research are not a repetition of tired issues that have been raised in the field, but through that integration of other fields, we are positioned to raise more and fresh arguments that can arise within the space of research. Then the other thing, of course, the third one is being respectful. You know, if you want to go far as a researcher, you got to respect other people that have come before you, some that you are your peers, and those that are behind you. And that element of humility, respectfulness, will unlock new dimension in your interdisciplinary research. That respectful attitude will enable you to to see the other colleague as well as an individual that can contribute to transformation and change of the research landscape. And then also the fourth aspect is also as an individual, as a researcher, have an in-depth understanding of your research discipline, your research niche. If you have got a very deep understanding of your research niche, it implies that once you integrate and meet with other colleagues, you are in a position to ensure that you learn and share what you have. So you don't go into partnership with an empty vessel, but you are going into partnership with something to provide where you colleagues in the research can negotiate. And also the fifth one, you also have to trust that other people can contribute. Other people have got knowledge. You are not the only source of knowledge. We are all equal partners. So I demystify the notion that one is the best, one is the all-knowing. We all have to trust that I can get something from humanity and we move together. And perhaps the last one, Chair, is to embrace a paradigm that actually allows you to see other forms of knowledge as important. I'm a transformativist paradigm researcher, where I also believe that whatever we do must transform the humanity, must change for the better, and that change cannot be within my vicinity. It might need me to tap into other spaces for that change to happen. So those are the six principles that have guided me and made me successful in the area of interdisciplinary research. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dube. And those are actually vital principles that you have just mentioned. And it's really important for one to look at other knowledge streams with respect. Jules, you mentioned that in your study with the call, in your scholarship on call communities, you mentioned that these communities, the water quality became negative, and you ended up bringing in an ecologist to test the water. At what point did you begin to say there is an issue regarding water in this community? At what point during your research did you identify that as an issue?
Thanks for that question, Gray. And the answer is actually before I even started my research, because I had grounded my sort of knowledge in the region by those who had come before me. So other anthropologists, sociologists, historians who had identified this as an issue. So I kind of already knew that was there, but it was in talking to people in the community that it made very clear that we needed someone who, in the United States, you have to have a sort of standing. And of course, I'm sure it's like this across the globe, but we had to have that kind of hard scientific proof to be able to then take it to the next step, which was engaging with a legal team who was able to then take it to the courts. And so I would just say in those sort of terms, I believe that disciplines are still needed, individual disciplines, because I cannot be the best anthropologist I can be, and also the best stream ecologist. And I certainly do not have a legal degree. And so to me, the sort of individual disciplines are still very important. However, if we exist in a vacuum, I think that's a serious problem. And so I really like this idea of an academy without borders, without these sort of strict boundaries between disciplines, but a sort of respect for the expertise we all bring, but a knowledge that we must come together as a community of scholars, but also with the communities in which we inhabit, as other colleagues have been stating, that our own positionality, including where we live and who we are as people, really matters. And those are ways in which I think we can also transcend some of these boundaries as well. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Jules. Transcending boundaries, Dr. Manjoro, you spoke of co-creation earlier on as a critical ingredient for successful interdisciplinary research. Can you maybe give us some practical examples of how you have done it as well in your space, given the different types of research that you have done? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Chair. So maybe let me take the one on the village chicken as an example. At times, as a researcher, you sit down because you would say, okay, we need funding. What could be the problem? And normally we can get some of these research ideas from reading relevant literature and the like. But at times it may not be exactly as we are seeing it when you go out there into the community. So I've learned to work with the community and not on them or for them. So in that case, when we are trying to conceptualize the idea, trying to see if this is really a problem and the like, after identifying, then there is a scenario where we sit down with the communities, and I've learned to appreciate that they know more what we can expect. At times you might think that we are there to tell them, but actually you end up really having a larger listening ear, so to speak. So in that way, to sit down as teams from the university and then from the community, and then together at least we came up with a congruent researchable area which we thought that would really enhance the community, because what we might think is core to them may not be for them. So it helped in the sense that when we were now finalizing, developing the proposal, finalizing and submitting it, it had some practical implications and ideas in it already, so it was easier to get funding out of it. And even in implementing the research, it was easier because we were with them from the beginning, and at times they will call you when you had not scheduled to go out into the field. And out of that, there was even more connection from others who are knowledgeable in trying to train the farmers on how to manage village chickens and to market them. So that there were some farmers who had received the training, and as we speak, they are earning a living out of it. And they are saying, what else after COVID? They were saying, there COVID, it came and it has gone, so to speak. What else can we do together which can help us to move even further than what we achieved? So those are some of the things that helps even sustainability of what we're trying to solve or what we're trying to achieve together as a community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manjoro. And it's a good example of also the intersection between local knowledges. I don't want to call them indigenous knowledges, local knowledges, and the so-called scientific knowledge as well. Dr. Mshonga, if you might also, you raised an important point earlier on when you spoke of dismantling the master narratives within the context of interdisciplinarity. Is it possible in an interdisciplinary research, not is it possible, how in an interdisciplinary research encounter can we genuinely have equal relationships?
Thank you, Chair. I would say yes, it is possible, but I'm not sure in terms of the idea of equal relationships. But in terms of the idea of these, master narratives, meta narratives, meta scripts, and the like, I think they belong to a particular age and to a particular century. In this century in which we are living, I think, I believe in this whole idea of, if you want, trying or having to do what we may call researching back. Because if we research back, we are able to try and dig that which had been submerged, by imperial ways of knowing and doing. And to do that actually means that we can do away with, you know, the master narratives or the meta narratives. For instance, Bagela Chilisa talks of, you know, the need to question how disciplines like psychology, education, history, anthropology, sociology, science, you name it, we're actually involved in this idea of othering, you know, and theorizing and describing the colonized other, you know, and obviously refusing to let the colonized other name and, you know, describe himself or herself from his or her own frame of reference. So there's disintegration in the 21st century. There's disintegration of the master or meta narratives, whether you like it or not, because the knowledge is being contested. I think it is at the cusp. And so, because if there's contestation and there's disintegration, where exactly are we going? We're actually moving towards interdisciplinarity. And what I like about, especially if I were to talk about the locus of enunciation, you know, the whole idea of the geopolitical and body political, you know, knowledge, the idea of, you know, situated knowledge. I would like to talk or to quote from or to paraphrase Jean Casimir, you know, a former Haitian, you know, ambassador to the United States and diplomat, who simply said, "My power of strength comes from observing the outside world through my own eyes. If I do the opposite, I put myself in an inferior position through the gaze of the other." And so if we adopt that idea, it means we are able to start from where we are and to think from where we are. If we start from where we are and think from where we are able to disrupt these meta narratives, to disrupt these, you know, meta scripts and hegemonic, you know, discourses. So that's my take. So I think that's the question you asked. Maybe I should stop there.
Yes, no, thank you for that response. I think it's a very valid response, and it's a very good way to also kind of open us up now to the other colleagues in the audience. I'm going to probably open up for a round of comments so that colleagues talk. We have about 10 to 15 minutes here, well, before we give the panel an opportunity for them to put up their closing remarks as well. But I would like to open it up to the colleagues, the ones who are not in the panel. You can just raise your hand, preferably comments, but not questions. But you're also allowed to ask questions, but preferably comments to add to the debate. If anyone wants to say anything, or I can go back to the panel, I'll just check. Any thoughts? Andy Somdlankomo, Pamela, anything from your side? Okay, I think our panel is not. Our panel has done a good job of basically consolidating a lot of this information and a lot of these things. Colleagues in the panel, any closing remarks you'd like to make? 2 to 3 minutes each. I'll start with Dr. Kanyetsi.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes. What I would say is that much as we want to engage into interdisciplinary research, which is very good, we should also appreciate that we come from different schools of thoughts, which happens also within the same discipline. You'll find that scholars come from different schools of thoughts, and that is a challenge. So much that when we get into interdisciplinary research, we should really develop sense of appreciation because we will never ever come to 100% agreement in a number of things that we would want to do. But if we are ready to learn from one another, we are ready to create space to learn, then we can be successful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kanyetsi. And as we give these closing remarks, I forgot to say this. Let's also look at particular methods, that we can probably suggest on how we can enhance and amplify interdisciplinary research, and maybe some of the likely pitfalls or drawbacks we might experience, and how we also might have to navigate those pitfalls as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Kanyetsi. I'll ask Dr. Dube.
Chair, thank you so much, and I really appreciate. My issue is to say it must not remain a rhetoric, us talking about it here, and there is nothing. Let us begin to make it practical. Let us begin to have things that we can collaborate between various departments so that we show people that these things are possible. Let us see how our education aspect can speak into your community development, into the issues of gender studies, and start to map projects, because many projects that are funded these days are the ones that appreciates an interdisciplinary approach. So we position ourselves for good funding, good opportunities when we implement it in reality, not in terms of rhetoric. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Dube. Jules?
I guess in my closing remarks, what I would say is that I think the most powerful examples of how those of us in academia have been able to work with and for our communities in seeking solutions to environmental problems, social problems, and other issues of the kind are those in which there are collaborators across the disciplines. So, of course, my own example earlier, as myself as an anthropologist, ecologists, there have been other cases with soil scientists, lawyers, even journalists, as well as folks in the arts, such as filmmaking, as well as music and dance coming together in this sort of interdisciplinary way, collaborating, connecting, and working with our community and creating community has really been the best way in which I've seen these real world problems have some sort of solution. Nothing is perfect, but it has provided some relief to folks in these communities. And I believe that these multiple modes of knowing and multiple modes of seeking knowledge are really valuable, and also has the potential to reach folks in other disciplines and in other ways in the community through various disciplines, and drawing attention to these issues and finding ways in which all of us, regardless of our discipline, can plug in to help with these solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jules. Very, very valid points raised. Dr. Manjoro?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to say that while there are some limitations to interdisciplinarity, for example, there are some who might benefit more than others, and some might get accolades while others are not. Or in some instances, you see that you would have started the journey together, but at the end, some would have dropped along the way, either by themselves or how they are being treated in the team, or feeling excluded. At times there's no transparency. It's always good to be fair. Expressing fairness, even in sharing responsibilities to avoid overburdening others, is quite crucial. I'm glad to indicate that, at least, especially if you look at the geographical differences with regards to research ethics and integrity, there is a Cape Town statement that is being put forward to ensure that some of the issues that were left behind by the Montreal strategy or a policy are being catered for example, issues of diversity, equity, fairness, and inclusivity. So it will help us to move forward. So yes, there could be some hurdles here and there, but we have at least some enablers that will help us to move forward. So for example, if at least we can appreciate each other's strengths and weaknesses, understanding that we are not the same, it will help us to sail through. The other thing that can help us is to have at least the institutional support, because at times, if that is lacking, it might not help colleagues to achieve their milestones in the expected time. And the other thing that may help is also to develop some documents that help them at least to navigate through. It could be a standard of operation or a charter which describes how are they identified, who they are. If people see them, then they can even learn from them. I think that will help us as well. Even capacity building and continued learning, it helps because we may be at different levels in understanding this. I would like to applaud the center for having such a webinar, because it helps to bring awareness. It helps to ensure that people really understand and see where to start from. At least when you are coming into an interdisciplinary research or team, you're not starting from zero or a negative, but you're starting from somewhere. So this will help, even if the awareness is done through probably success stories, just a brief, or it could be blog writing. Webinars like what we are doing at the moment, it's quite encouraging. And I would like to think that once we do that, we will have coordinated response to these complex challenges that we are facing globally. And it will help us not to go solo in creating them and to avoid duplication, because if we don't share, we might be doing same things but at different spaces. So despite the fact that there might be challenges, but there are more benefits to that. So I would urge us all to continue dipping deeper into this interdisciplinary arena. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manjoro. The coordinated approach and the constant emphasis on all of us really constantly hitting at the issues and the challenges together in a coordinated framework. Dr. Mshonga, any wise words from your side to conclude?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to start with the point raised by Dr. Manjoro, the issue of funding. And I'm proud to say that, or maybe let me start by saying, if you look around the world, you will find that, most funding bodies, councils, organizations, and the like are putting emphasis on interdisciplinary research. And as a result, and on that note, I would like actually to say hats off to UFS. I know the Dean's Office is funding interdisciplinary research. I know the Vice Rector's Office research is also funding interdisciplinary research. And all these, funding opportunities, they are simply meant to deal or to do away with, disciplinary and, ethnocentrism, which is a feature of academic cultures. So the whole idea is to demolish borders. The whole idea is to make sure that at least we come up with a new thing, a new consolidated thing coming out of that. So there's funding, but on the other hand, obviously, funding could be a challenge in other institutions, in other places. So in order to deal with that, we have to deal with the issue of funding. And then secondly, to say that I think we also need very stable and supportive leadership in terms of how to administer, this collaborative research, because time for me is a key resource. And the problem is, in the 21st century, I think we are in an academic capitalism, world. where I think universities have been forced to adopt the model of the private sector and the like. And so there is so much to do, which is taking many researchers and academics away from research, and so they don't have adequate time to concentrate on trying to build up solid interdisciplinary researches. So I think time is a resource and it's a constraint if it is not managed well. So I think that's one of the things. And so obviously to simply say that in terms of interdisciplinarity, I think the most important thing is to keep the frontiers between the disciplines and the interdisciplines wide open. As I said, you can't talk of interdisciplinary without talking about disciplinary approaches. And finally, to say that if you have to embark on the path of convivial scholarship, you have to have the interdisciplinarity. That is, you have to be present everywhere at the same time, because convivial scholarship cautions disciplines, it cautions their borders, it cautions the gatekeepers to open up and embrace differences. And once you open up and embrace differences, I think you are moving towards a solution. And finally, convivial scholarship, if you embrace that, there are no final answers, there are no permanent, but only permanent, troubling, and tormenting questions that can then help you to get some kind of solution. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Mshonga, on ending it very well with this issue of convivial scholarship. That's a new term that we really need to begin to dig deep into, to understand it, and to a great extent embrace it. Is Professor Hudson still in? Whether she also has, as an interdisciplinary scholar herself, maybe she might have a few points she would like to share. Words of advice, Prof?
Ooh, from the wise one, not so wise one, Gray. I don't have much to say, but I think that I want to pick up on what Dr. Mushonga said about convivial scholarship. Francis Nyamjo's notion of conviviality is very useful in the interdisciplinary work that we do, because you have to recognize that we're all dependent and once and incomplete, like the character in Amos Tutola's book, The Palm Wine Drink It. And once we recognize that we are incomplete, we realize that we are dependent on others. And such scholarship I think, can be ethically sound and can be hugely fulfilling. And I think in the humanities, as scholars, we need to practice what we preach. And I think that conviviality is a very useful starting point. So thank you, Dr. Mushonga, for that as well. So Gray, I hope that gives you a little bit, but probably not enough.
No, it's more than enough. Colleagues, to the panel, Dr. Manjoro, Dr. Dube, Dr. Julie Shepard-Powell, Dr. Mshonga, Dr. Kanyetsi, thank you so much for having spared your time, giving us your thoughts on this very important topic. We are only beginning. Of course, interdisciplinarity might have as a long history, but we are only now starting to grapple with what it means and trying to go beyond rhetoric, as Dr. Dube has mentioned. So we cannot say thank you enough for having spared your time across institutions and across continents, Jules. Prof. Heidi, thank you so much for also opening and for the words of wisdom you have said, and also for really ensuring that we are on focus as a faculty, and also really prioritize scholarship in an advanced but also effective way. To the colleagues that attended, thank you as well for having set aside the time. I really hope you learned a lot. I did. There are a lot of concepts and issues I've also discovered that I also really want to explore further. But I've also learned the different approaches, the different scholarships that colleagues engage in at different institutions, at UFS, and also across the world. Having said that, that's the end of our webinar. I really wish everyone a good day further. Stay safe and all the best. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Bye.
Thank you, Gray.
Thank you. Bye, colleagues.